All right, welcome everybody. We're excited to get going on this one. We're going to be talking about this idea from always on to just enough, how you rethink AI work and worth. A really interesting session I think we're going to have today. I connected with Trish McGinty not too long ago and was super impressed with some of the things she's been doing in her career, but also as she's kind of like all of us, trying to navigate the ever-changing environment, what her role is in that, and how do you basically become successful. So Trish, thanks so much for joining. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Gabe. This is great to join, and a really interesting topic for me, as you know. I'm excited to discuss this further.
Yeah, this one's very near and dear to your heart, I can imagine. And it'll be fun to kind of dive in. But before we do, maybe just start big picture. I gave just a very, very short, probably not very good overview intro, but tell us some of the things you've been up to and some of the kind of, maybe inspirational things you've kind of been starting to think about over the last little while.
Yeah, so I suppose late last year, I came back from my second maternity leave, and I started to feel overwhelmed overall with everything. And really started to think about the future of work, and how that was shifting. And with AI, I really felt that it started to change January, February at the start of this year for
Yeah.
me anyway. And I felt like I was falling behind.
Yeah.
And I also felt that that was not something that I could really talk about because I didn't feel like I was an expert.
I love it.
And actually, when I said that out loud, I was like, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. So I started posting consistently, really from February 1st. And the great thing about that, I just naturally love to write, but
Yes.
writing gives great clarity. So it kind of forced me to learn what are the tips and tricks that I can use that can make me faster in doing my job, what can save
Mm.
me time as a parent, and just overall, how can AI really change? And then the other part to that is that you probably see in my post that I talk a lot about personal branding.
Yeah.
And the more that I looked into it, I could see that that's the one thing that we can take with us.
Yeah.
Whether we move companies,
Mm.
whether the whole industry is transforming, we always have our stories to tell because they're unique to us. So I thought, what can I really
Awesome.
anchor in on? And that's the intersection of AI and personal branding.
Yeah. Look, that's such a cool. Well, but I have like 1,000 follow-up questions, but before I do, just how has it been? If you had to kind of explain them, certainly it sounds like, you come back from maternity, like most of us, you're feeling, I didn't even come back from maternity. I feel overwhelmed. Like I'm not an expert, but you
Yeah.
come back, I'm sure there's been some ups, some downs, but generally, what has that journey been like so far? It's been pretty exciting, but there's also been a couple lumps in the road.
Yeah, so I use writing to kind of get through. Writing's kind of like my therapy
Yeah.
to figure things out. So initially I started thinking about, well, how can I find the balance and what does that even look like? And that's such a big topic because that balance is very different for different people. Different people will have different goals. So you really have to anchor in on your core values, what you want out of life.
I love it.
I also think that that's what AI has kind of forced us to do as well. Like, why are we here? What are we
Mm.
doing? What is the purpose of work? And we're really certainly I see we're shifting from task productivity driven to more outcomes. And
Yeah.
it's forcing us to think bigger and it's allowing us to think bigger. And that's what really excites me as well.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well we got to dive into some of this stuff. So a couple things to just highlight. I love your point on like writing makes you, just really have to think about it more and you put pen to paper, and I think that really, you know, it's hard, but it helps you articulate it, helps you think through it, and it sounds like that's been a real not only therapeutic but also I learn it. I have to teach others, and I kind of have to like spend the time. I love that concept, and so many of us, if you have the fear of writing, if you can get over that, I think there's to her point, there's just a lot there that you can learn both personally and helping others. The second thing though is that personal brand concept, right? It's like with the world that's changing so much. I don't know if you said that directly, but it's like, AI might take some jobs. Okay. It might take some tasks, but I don't know if it'll take your personal brand anytime soon. And now more than ever, we need guides. We need people who are kind of stepping up and helping others learn and grow. And I think we're all looking for those types of people. And so love that concept. And I think many of us need to step out of that circle, that maybe unfortunate or awkward moment, and just be like, you know what, you don't have to be a thought leader, but God, it's awesome to just kind of start to say your opinions, your thoughts, because you'd be surprised at I think how many people are wanting to hear that. And I think Trish has been one of those people. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've not been overwhelmed, but you've been like, oh my goodness, like people want to, like they want to hear from me, and I like my thoughts are valuable. And I think many people thought initially or think initially that people they're not going to be interested, but you've experienced something slightly different. Again, you're maybe not like the New York Times bestseller, but there's some cool things happening. Is that correct?
I'm definitely not the New York Times bestseller. But yeah, I think we all, even if it's 5 people, 100 people,
Yeah,
5,000 people, that's a lot. LinkedIn has over 1 billion people, 1 billion members.
that's
So
crazy.
when you think about that, even if you were to tap into 10,000 of that, that's like a really
It's
big
awesome.
concert.
Yeah, look, I think it's awesome. And by what do they say? Small things, great things come to pass, so you got to start small sometimes. But cool. Well, I wanted to dive into a couple of these things because you've obviously been now in the thick of it, trying to understand AI and trying to understand personal branding. So see if I can sneak a couple secrets from you here. So one of the things you've kind of said is that, and you were just alluding to this, but maybe a double click. It's like AI isn't just changing how we work, but why we work the way we do. What do you mean by that? Is that kind of task versus outcome thing, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think the whole thing when you think about AI, it's not just automating tasks, it's kind of rewriting the whole contract of work, and
Yeah,
not how we just not how we're just walking through the door, but why are we walking through it? And it forces you to really think about that.
yeah,
So it's changing every single um, industry, even though some maybe are slower to change than others. But
sure.
when I think about, say, customer success, how customer success managers are spending their time, when you look back a couple of years ago, hours spent building quarterly business reviews, analyzing data, formatting slides. And then that's really moving to where all of that can be automated.
Hmm.
And the focus is really on building those strong relationships. It's that human to human interaction. And again, that falls back to, your personal brand,
Yeah.
everything, strengthening that relationship. People want that connection. And we're also seeing the rise of communities and
Mm.
people looking to find ways to build communities online as well as offline.
Yeah. Yeah. And really start to that human connection. It's going to continue to evolve, but I think it's is to your point only going to get stronger and stronger. One of the things you've kind of talked about is just this idea of working parents in general. And again, I'm going to bounce around here a little bit, but you've talked about this idea of like a lot about it's ambient agents. I think. How do you see these reshaping cognitive load, especially for some of these working parents in the situation they're in?
Yeah, well, for working parents, it's really that overwhelm, that mental pressure that you're feeling, and you're just looking to free up some space. Like my son is back to school next week, and like a lot of others, there's just more and more tasks that are on your plate all of the time.
Yeah.
So anything that you can use that can free up. So ambient agents, the whole um, theory behind that is that they're working in the background.
Yeah.
So if you can connect your emails, the emails that come in from
Mm,
school, everything, the reminders. I've got a whole agenda from school that I need to also weave into my calendar,
mm,
as well as school lunches, everything that goes on, all the activities that the kids have. So there's so many free tools. I mean, when we think about what large corporate companies can invest in versus as a
yeah.
parent, you're not going to
Yeah.
spend a huge amount of money on AI tools. So there's lots of free tools out
Is,
there.
is there a couple? Is there a couple, Trish? Because yeah, that you again, I don't want this to be a sales pitch for a bunch, but I think
Yeah.
sometimes that's where people like myself, to your point, it's all back to school time ish here, and Yeah, how have you found some of these ways to do it? Are there certain tools that you're like, oh, check these out or go look here? Because sometimes that's where we're missing. It's like, I love what she's saying, but how do I do that?
Yeah, like something I think the best way, because I think that you can be extremely overwhelmed and then not use something, and that's what I'd want to avoid doing. And I was certainly there myself, where
Yeah.
I became so overwhelmed I just didn't do anything. And there's so much great stuff out there. So I use Gmail for my personal for all my personal emails. I love Gemini as well. So they have some new free, I don't think they're actually accessible right now, but they have some more upcoming. But tools that I've played around with, reclaim.ai,
Okay.
that's a free plan
Okay.
that can help you auto block time for tasks. I use Notion as
Okay.
well, free plan, and I build that into. I've had it took me quite a while, but I definitely think it's worthwhile. And I think this is a lot like
Notion specific. You're saying Notion specifically? Is that what you're saying?
Notion, yeah,
Worth it? Okay. Okay.
yeah. Um,
Cool.
and just playing around with what makes sense for you. But where I really saw the value, and I think with any AI tool, you need to give it context and you need to
Mm,
share what you're doing.
right. Right.
It's the same when you're using ChatGPT or Claude. It gets better the more context you provide and
Yeah.
it understands you better.
I love it.
So the same with Notion. It took me quite a while, but now it's quite free flowing where you know, it knows exactly there's four of us in the family. We have a lot of our information there and it just makes things easier.
Fascinating. All right. Well, the challenge is on. We got to get with this. With that in with that in mind, you've touched on this idea of like these 15-minute windows. Maybe you could just touch on what it is and maybe some of the powerful things you've actually built or solved by kind of separating and putting these types of things in your calendar.
Yeah, so I just, again, this comes back to that feeling of being really overwhelmed and then that feeling of your brain starts to shut down and you don't do anything about it. So I just thought, right, what can I do in 15 minutes? If it goes beyond that, amazing. If I can just do 15 minutes. So I started doing this with, I listen to AI podcasts. If I'm really, really tired, that's great for just to absorb something.
Mm,
But when something that I find the most useful for me, so I love to write. So I've been writing for years. And I called my Substack draft mode because I felt like I was in draft mode for years and years, where I wouldn't actually
I'd
post
forgotten
anything.
that actually. That's a great name. We talked about that last time we chatted, and that's such a
So
great one. Yeah, good.
taking all of that, like all of the good stuff that I'd say, well, not all of it is good, but you know, it's my thoughts. And I think lots of people probably have lots of thoughts on paper that they didn't share with anyone or they don't want to share. But some of it could have some really half-baked ideas that could maybe evolve into something
Mm,
with the power of AI. So something I did that was really powerful. I took all of my content across all I use Google Drive
yeah.
over the years, all of that. And I was able to plug that into AI to help develop that into newsletter content, build a system around it. So I think building a powerful system has really been
Hmm.
transformational for me. I don't expect, you know, I'm not a software engineer. I'm not going to build this next billion-dollar unicorn, but I can build powerful systems that can help me.
Support some of your strengths, like
Yeah,
writing, for example. That's cool. And is it? I mean, what do you the 15-minute you tried to kind of separate these times and do it a couple times a week, and that's kind of helped that overwhelming. I
every
mean,
day.
it's
Yeah. You
every
just
day you've been. Do you do it? For oh my goodness, and you've actually done it, or you've my
every
goodness.
day. I think what has helped is my husband is obsessed with everything to do with AI. He's kind of in that, he's in the data analytics
Yeah.
industry. So I suppose that was more of a natural next step for him. But because he is absorbing so much of it, that kind of passed over to me. So we always have a podcast, just like you would have had the radio playing years ago. Um, so much that like we even
You are
have
awesome. You are like diving in full force here, Trish. I love it. You don't
a
even
bit
listen to
like
the radio. You listen to crazy AI podcast.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, but look, I think one of the reasons I thought Trish would be fun is it's just to her point. It's a great story because I think we're all in that same place. Again, maybe it's not maternity, but we're changing jobs, or we're in a job that maybe and we're feeling overwhelmed. And again, these small things, do make a big impact. And it sounds like at first you were only up to your ankles, and now you're up to your neck in AI stuff. So kudos, that's super awesome. Just one more quick follow up on that. Again, just thinking tactical. Is there a couple? You mentioned you kind of built like a system for your content, or you built. Is there a couple again best practices or tools you'd recommend? Like, hey, again, I'm not going to build $1 billion company, but I just use ChatGPT and for my
Yeah.
content, and it's like small baby steps, crawl, walk, run.
Yeah, I think go with what tool that you like using that you're not. So we have the big three. You've got Google Gemini, you've got OpenAI with ChatGPT, and then you have Claude with Anthropic. So
Yeah,
whichever one you lean towards, I use a combination of mainly ChatGPT and Claude,
yeah.
and then I actually plug that content system into Notion, and I'm only scratching the surface. There's so much more that I want to do. I know there's integrations with Zapier and
Mm-hmm.
N8N, which I
Mm-hmm.
haven't gotten to, but again, what I try to do is if I have an idea, I write it down and I think, okay, tomorrow, can I make this
Cool.
even better? Can I improve the system a little bit better? But just
Yeah.
kind of lean towards what you naturally feel that you like using, and then
Yeah.
see where you can go from there.
I love that. I love that. And again, you've convinced I need to get deeper in Notion. I'm taking that away from our call for sure. I feel like I've only scratched the surface, as you're probably saying. So,
Yeah.
cool. One of the topics that you've hit, and this is a little more philosophical, but yeah, you've mentioned the gender gap in AI adoption. I'm not remember the exact numbers, but maybe touch on how that came about. What's driving it? How can we respond? What's kind of your thinking there?
Yeah, so I think the stat was that women are 25% behind men with AI.
Yeah,
And it's
crazy.
quite a bold stat.
Yeah.
It drove a lot of conversation, and I'm really happy that we've had that conversation because
I
whether
need to
people,
get that. I need to get that because that is you say that again. You mentioned that the other day, and geez, yeah. Sorry, that's pretty big though. That is pretty big.
it's really big, and it kind of forced me to look into that. Is this stat, like, where is this coming from? It was a Harvard Business Review, a Deloitte study as well, and the numbers are there. But when we look at, there's incredible women in
Mm,
that are leading and building in AI, and I
for
think that
sure.
is the key takeaway for me when I started sharing that. More and more people that I wasn't aware of
Mm,
started tagging each other, driving that conversation on sharing what they were doing in the space as well, and then also what can we do to help people that aren't, and what's the reason behind it. So
mm,
looking at the reason for the gap, um, some of the representation is missing. If women aren't in the data sets or the testing groups,
Oh,
um,
interesting.
it could,
Interesting.
and many women as well. What I've read is from the ethical standpoint, spending longer time to really consider, is this
Mm,
going to be safe, and is this the best way for us to do
yeah.
it? So taking the time with it, not all but some, and then looking at, really, is the gap there, or some of the studies are only measuring tool signups, which I didn't realize, and not the actual
Uh,
workflows.
uh,
So
oh,
there
that's
is,
cool. You actually dove in because yeah, sometimes those are a little. I mean, devil's in the details, but
yeah.
what would you appreciate the double click? Is there thoughts? I mean, obviously you've taken this journey. Is there thoughts for women who are that you'd recommend to companies or women themselves? Like, hey, you got to kind of let's do this. I've done it. You can do it. Just take the time. Or what advice would you give there?
Yeah, so again, like the people that, there's so many, like so many to mention, but I love, so Ali K. Miller is one of the
Mm,
top AI voices. I love reading.
she's
I
so
think
good.
he really makes it. easy for everybody to absorb, which I
Yeah.
think is really important there. There was a recent launch, I'm sure you're fully aware of, ChatGPT 5, and even the talk track around that, I think they said we want to make this accessible to all,
Yeah.
but the language used wasn't very accessible to
Yeah.
all. So if you
Yeah.
want to democratize it, you do need to use that language. So I spoke a lot
Interesting.
about recently about having this new role as AI translators. So it's like, here's the jargon. I actually was really, it really struck me because I thought, well, this is typically a conversation that happens internally when the product team would announce, here's a new product. But then there would be a steady flow throughout the different teams, and then sales would simplify it and have that
Mm,
conversation. But that was missing. So there's a whole, because AI is advancing so fast
so
with
fast.
new
Yeah.
changes, then there's opportunity there for people to cut through the noise and say,
Yeah.
well, this is how more people can use it
I
and
love
come
it.
up with those use cases.
I love it. I love it. That makes tons of sense. Cool. Well, look, it was been so fun to toss around a couple different ideas. Also, hear a little bit about your journey. I think it's relevant to so many listeners out there. As we leave today, what advice would you give for people who or maybe where you were a couple of years ago, just or whatever, a few months back, feeling overwhelmed, a
Mhm.
little bit about by the pace of AI, especially maybe even some of those people outside the tech bubble who it's not as easy to access. Any advice you'd leave them as they try to start that journey?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice is just continue to be curious.
Yeah.
And you don't need to know everything. Just lean into that fear. Like I leaned into the fear and the overwhelm, and 6 months later, this is where I'm at. So I really
Mm,
can't believe that. But just jump in where you're at. If you're wondering, where can you help to bring AI into your role, just even write down simply what are your everyday tasks,
mm,
and then try to design your own systems around that. What can you automate? And if you're really stuck, just think about what can I learn in 15 minutes. There's a whole
love it.
host of podcasts, newsletters. Um, I share regular updates on my LinkedIn every single day. So if people want to follow, they
I was just going to
can.
ask if somebody wants to learn a little more or dive into some of these top. What is the best way to get follow Trish? Give us that quick overview. I didn't mean to interrupt. You were just saying it, but yeah, dive in real fast.
Yeah, so I have a Substack, Draft Mode AI, if anyone's on Substack. And then on my LinkedIn, you can just find me, Trish McGinty, if you want to connect.
Awesome,
And
awesome, cool.
I post every single day. So
Yeah, look,
every
she is. She's a regular. I love it. That's I think how I found you was somebody called you out and I was watching her content. And I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. Great story, as I said. So awesome. Okay. Well, Trish, appreciate you taking the time. It's fun to hear kind of again your journey and some of these tips and tricks and things you've learned. So appreciate you doing it. And for the audience, have a fantastic rest of your day.